And we are live, alive and alive. So much to do, so little time. Everyone those really busy days and everything doesn't line up the way you hoped to. Well, that is certainly true for a video that I was actually uploading. That will be published after the blog post because there's some details that have to go on there. The vlog Thursday 324 is done early today because Tom has a lot to do later today. And I've already been already been working on just the what do you call it? The 3CX thing that's not in my blog title, but obviously first thing I'll mention, I'll have a deeper dive in a video. I do highly recommend you read the Huntress blog post on it. Huntress did a good job of citing everybody involved in it. That's a big mess right now. And supply chain attacks are always some of the worst because they're so hard to defend against. They're so hard to unravel. And it takes a lot of cooperation, a lot of investigating. And I've actually been impressed. The security teams have really come together in a lot of different ways to take this apart, reverse engineer it, and everything else. So I think that's definitely, a thing. I'm getting pinged over here for this is what happens sometimes during my day when there's things going on. I actually was talking to the people at Huntress, so I was going to with that blog post I'm doing is a lot of details goes into it. Let me just pull it up real quick because I think it's worth sharing here. Pull up the Huntress post because if you're not familiar, yes, there is a big incident with why can't I type today? I should learn how to spell. There we go. Now that I'm spelling things correctly, it's helpful. But I'll be doing a deeper video that's already done. I just haven't published it yet. That I'll be posting on this as a topic, and it's specifically going to be this attack, which is the 3CX supply chain attack. So this, I'll throw a link in the comments real quick so people can read through it together. But it's definitely and 3CX is just a big player in the market. So this being that they were attacked, it's pretty big news. Also, how it was deciphered and how it's reverse engineered. There's just a lot of collaboration going on, and there's a lot to talk about. So I did my video on it, but my video, I reiterated several times that this is like an initial starting point. This is to get the awareness out there to tell people they need to take action if you have this installed. They have listed in here, of course, which desktop applications this affects. There's 2 specific versions that we know now. And if you're watching this in the future, don't leave a comment and say, Tom, did you know there's like XYZ more? Well, we don't know that yet. We don't know if it's only limited to these 2. We're stating what we know. So this is one of the things that makes security really hard is the knowns and then the stuff we learn in the future. So it's an ongoing, extremely active investigation. The good news is I don't know what's been compromised. Not to say that's good news, but we don't see this like actively destroying systems and deploying ransomware or anything like that right now. Now, in the disruptive future that is happening right now as major companies run through this, who knows what'll happen. But for now, at least nothing blew up. So we were at a start. Yeah, it's one of the interesting side notes of this attack is the size of it, 1, but 2, 3CX actually allows like white label reselling. So some other companies may be reselling 3CX and branding it with their own. So yeah, that's just big. Now, 3CX, in my opinion, did not get out ahead of this very well. So that's my opinion. I left notes in that video, and that's all I said. I don't think they got ahead of it, but I didn't spend a lot of time speculating on it. I focused on the facts of everything we know to provide actionable intelligence to the community. And yes, that video will be published as soon as I'm done. Because I have so many things to do today, I'm not going to keep this vlog going too long, but I do want to talk about some projects, comparing firewalls, lab testing, and Errata. But I like to get the questions out. I do have the ability for people to email me. Let me pull that up here. Throw that down here at the bottom. I started doing this so you have an easier way to contact me if you want to. This is, just so I can read through it on the blog. I don't reply to these emails, by the way, in case you're ever wondering. I don't necessarily have time to, but I do read through them and respond to people. Let me go through here and pull them up. Only one question was sent in last week. And they were asking about share permissions, and I definitely am going to need to do an updated video on TrueNAS scale and share permissions. It's a constant confusion that people have, and they're not that much different than TrueNAS Core. Now, the layout is different in terms of like the menus, and I think I've done a video where I talked a little bit about that. But uh, permissions, by the way, it's not actually. I'm not going to blame TrueNAS Scale or Core for permission questions as much as I think people have a harder time grasping permissions. This completely applies to Windows and Active Directory and your how you assign permissions to different folders and shares. I see the same confusion over there. I just don't do that as a topic. And sometimes people's first dive into shared permissions is with TrueNAS because they maybe aren't an administrator of something like Active Directory. So, yeah, I'm working on some updated videos for it to try to do it. My old videos are actually accurate still. The menus may be a little bit different, but you can apply my older video on how to do permissions and shares to still how the works in TrueNAS scale, even though I did it with Core maybe 2 years ago. But keeping this library of videos is an ever ongoing challenge. I showed my workflow of how I get this done as fast as possible. But as fast as possible, still, I have a lot of moving components on there, and I'm always working at ways to be more efficient. So hopefully I'll get to that soon. That's somewhere in between. I actually do a lot of consulting. If you guys didn't know, I'm not just a video producer. I have a business, have a bunch of employees. I have some interactions that I have to do to run the business as well. I've actually delayed right now. I got some taxes I have to file. I even got some accounting I have to do. There's, yeah, my day is rather packed, but that's how I want it. I choose to do this because this is what keeps me. I'm never bored is the best way I can say it. So, because someone asked me if I would have chose a career differently or things like that, I'm like, not really. Doing one specific task, it may not be as interesting to me as doing all the things I do at once. Which, by the way, not all at once, just the many things I do. Me and Jay from Learn Linux TV, we hang out every Tuesday night and do our tech talk. We always like to remind ourselves, and nobody's really actually good at multitasking. You set aside time, you focused on one task until that task is complete. So even though it may seem like you're round robining through things and you think you're good at it, the reality is highly focused doing block hours of time to accomplish one task is a better methodology for completing it than trying to complete many tasks at the same time. So just my thoughts on that. So I could at least share them. The next part of that question was, what services are you moving to Linode from on-premise? I don't know just yet what I'll move over to Linode. That's kind of undecided. Most of the things that I will host in the cloud in general are going to be like websites and forums because those are better hosted in the cloud. I don't know what I'll actually move there for right now. When I can, I like hosting things internally. It's convenient. But of course, if those things require, and this is generally my process for it, if something requires a lot of heavy public access, I don't really want to host that internally at my office for things. So yeah. Let's see. Did you not get the HT firmware for your brain? Hyperthreading firmware. We'll go with that. Make sure I caught up on all the questions. I did. And the next thing we're going to pull up here, this is the controversial topic I wanted to talk about today. Turns out 3CX had their own controversy to talk about, but this is the video I actually will probably do before I do the permissions video. This is going to cause some people with opinions. There's already been people arguing with me on Twitter about this a lot for whatever reason. I'll make it a little bigger, but there's a link on my on Twitter. I'll share a link here as well. Let me see how I can actually, let's do this so I can file. There we go. Copy. Add it back in here. There we go. And this is a firewall comparison that I'm making. So this is going to be controversial, I say, because yeah, we all know the UDM Pro is the best firewall, right? And this is, I put in here some general categories. This is where people seem to be upset the most is I didn't cover their firewall. I'm going to qualify this with at least I have some experience with these firewalls at some level, or I talk to people like Christian Lempa from this digital life, the digital life. His YouTube channel is great. Me and Christian talked about Sophos. I'm going to be linking to his video on it. So Sophos is one that I know a lot of people ask me about. So I figured it's worth noting in here because they have a free version for home users. Christian has a video on it. I will reference his video and I'll at least leave this as a comparison because it actually does have a lot of things on there. This is not necessarily directed all at home lab or home users. This is going to be maybe small businesses and things like that. But then you're going to ask, what about Palo Alto and some of those? Well, here's the problem when you start getting into some of those other firewalls. One, I don't have a lot of experience with them, but two, if you were just to lay them side by side, Palo Alto versus a fully loaded, whatever the latest Cisco is, for example, you'd probably find they have a list that says they do the same things. The nuance is always, going to fall into how they implement it, and saying they support a feature versus how they implement it is a really hard argument. And also to say how good their support is, once again, a hard argument. If you see some blog post from 2021 where someone complained about how bad their implementation of it was for some particular feature, and then later they have that implementation done well in 2023, you're not giving them a fair shake, and it becomes just not worth it because it's just a bunch of opinions floating around that is going to be a lot harder to do. So this is going to be how I break these things down and how some of them work, just to give people a general idea of all of it. So that's, yeah. As far as my thoughts on Meraki, I think they're overpriced. But do they have the features? Sure. I mean, Meraki's got a lot of things on the yes side of things. So, can you run it on your own hardware? Of course not. Central management via their site, licensing fees. I should put this in like a big bold yes. They do have a lot of these other features there. And for example, like the BGP OSPF, you're probably not going to want to buy Meraki for that. They have that as a feature, but it's not the most advanced feature. Do they have SD-WAN? Yes. Do they have OpenVPN? No, because people may ask about that. Do they have content filtering? And this is one of those ones that's going to be very subjective. You could make the argument that pfSense has content filtering. I said yes, but complex because I wouldn't use it. I don't recommend using it at all. And this is one of those things, like this is implemented very different between each of these. From a check the box, they can do it versus can they do it well? Can they do it in a manageable way? Are very different answers. And this is where you start going off the beaten path when it comes to firewall discussions of what they can do and what they can do in a reasonable, manageable way. And how do you define that? Because if you just are trying to check marketing check boxes, then you have a problem. Where the marketing people said, yes, it can do it. And then one engineer using it goes, oh God, I would never use it for that. It's a terrible use case because it's so hard to manage. So you can definitely see that's a problem there. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, this is, I'll answer this question because I think it's it's going to be a fun, because this is the picture I used of as a thumbnail for this, and we'll share this tab instead. Yes, there's a giant project that I'll do a video about, and Steve, you've seen him on here before. He's mentioning this is all it's a full install of a network, and it's kind of a mess. So Steve has been setting this up along with Eric. I think he's been on a channel before as well. Internal technicians are setting this big project up. And as you can see, there's a lot going on here. There's a bunch of cameras and UniFi equipment. And this is all going to be labeled, boxed, and sent and shipped to the client location and then installed. So I want to do a couple of videos on pre-deployments of, some of our internal term might be network in a box, kit in a box, of how we put all this together for people. So yes, definitely that'll be a discussion. Now, can I lock the top? Yeah, let's do that right now to make it easier. I think you do that with, I don't spend enough time doing spreadsheets. That's my problem. Where's freeze? One row, one row. There we go. We got it froze. There you go. It is now frozen, so you can scroll up and down on it. I'll make sure this is prettied up, installed in air quotes. Yeah. Actually, I do have my Insta360 camera. I do have some time lapse footage of this getting set up. So yes, I want to do more of that. So that is something I have, and definitely going to be a topic of how all that gets put together. Let's see. But yeah, I want to do this video because a lot of people have questions. But by no means is this going to be exhaustive on there, especially this last part here, traffic monitoring and reporting. They're not all using the same way they do it. And I put like yes with a couple of these, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but am I right to say that still they don't have good time slicing or accurate information when you're going through the USGs or the UDMs for how that works? Um, it's been a confusing topic sometimes when I look at the way the DPI reports are inside of UniFi going, why can't I just have an accurate time slice? Because knowing how much data was used or what sites they went to, cool. But I should know that over very specific time periods. So if you don't have time slicing, you're just kind of giving me raw data. Now, if you go over to NTOP NG, I've got a whole video on it. I probably need to do another one because there's a new version and that adds a few more features. But NTOP NG gives me very detailed information of exactly how the flows are going, because it's using like flow data to understand each connection, where it's going. NetFlow is, being able to look at NTOP NG and really dive into it is very helpful. So pfSense can do policy routing via protocol or port number, but not via application. Well, there's kind of a way to do it, but once again, there's no easy way to implement this. So this is where you're splitting hairs. I would say no. If you want to do application aware routing, where you're doing layer 7 to identify applications to then go through and create a policy around them, no. Can you use Active Directory objects easily in pfSense? No. If that's one of your things that you have as a requirement, I put that in there specifically. Firewall policy based on Active Directory. So I'm not saying you can't have pfSense talk to Active Directory for user authentication. That's different. So they do have AD integration, but firewall policies based on there. So maybe I should say firewall rule and policy might be more accurate. So we'll just put this like firewall based on Active Directory. That's a no. That's not something I'm aware of you can do with pfSense, where you can say, hey, when this user logs in, authenticate them against Active Directory and make that understanding in there. It's kind of an advanced use case. Now, one of the things pfSense is popular for is having a reverse proxy in it. So it has HA proxy in there. This is something that the other ones do not. But oddly, Sophos actually comes with the web application firewall, which sometimes people conflate web application firewall with reverse proxy. They are different things. While you can add rules to HA proxy, it's not the same as an actual web application firewall. So you can see where I'm going to cover this, but the nuance is going to be like, hey, you're going to have to dive in there, because some people started asking me like, well, what's the speed of each firewall? Well, that's a model dependent thing. So I'm going to leave some of that out. And, but the biggest thing it comes down to is, if you have a use case where you go, I need this feature, and you don't find that feature in my personal favorite firewall pfSense, then don't use it. I'm not trying to sell anybody on it, which is what the Twitter stuff turned into very quickly. People, really wanted to think I was trying to sell them on it. I'm like, I'm sharing my experiences with it. I didn't tell you not to use, like OpenSense is what people want to hear. I'm like, I don't use it. I don't really run into OpenSense in the wild very often, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. If it fits your use case and has all the boxes checked that make you happy, then you should definitely use the firewall that works best for you. Matter of fact, one of the things I encourage all the time to people is use firewalls that you're familiar with, because if you are using something you're unfamiliar with, you are more likely to have it misconfigured. So that's an important aspect as well. Fortinet has a reverse proxy. This is once again, we're talking about the Fortinet firewall. Fortinet has an entire reverse proxy and web application firewall, but it's a separate product. It's not an integrated. It can integrate as part of their ecosystem, but it's not in their firewall natively. So that's where I'm trying to draw a little bit of a line, but you could say the same thing for some of the other companies. At least Sophos, within Sophos XG Firewall, has a web application system. 48, it's a separate product you can buy, and it would integrate with your Fortinet ecosystem, but it's not native to just the firewall. That's my understanding from everything I've read. Not a 48 reseller, but I did talk to one, and my understanding is, that seems accurate. But if it isn't accurate and there's somewhere you can link to this, awesome. So counting JSON hacks as a UniFi feature, that's a whole nother thing. Just because you can do something by modifying JSON files, I'm going to definitely keep it in scope to firewall features that you use through the normal UI of the firewall, not something you have to go off script for. The big differences between OpenSense and pfSense, they forked a long time ago. So the difference gap is there. It's not massive, but they're different products now with different build teams. They do share that at the base level. The two things that pfSense and OpenSense have in common is the fact they both run on BSD, free BSD, and they both are open source projects that use the PF packet filter. Okay, now after that, are they similar? Yeah, but they have very different layouts for menus. They have a different plugin architecture. You can't transport the rules from one to the other, so there's no direct line of doing it. And I just don't want to take the time to learn it because I don't find any compelling feature that it offers that makes me want to switch over to it. So I'm just not including it. I don't think if you like it, keep using it. I prefer pfSense. They've been very solid. They don't have as many frequent updates, but I know that dives into the nuance of something I wasn't exactly sure how it worked. But I guess if you buy a commercial version, the licensed version of OpenSense, they give you a different, less frequent update path. I was told. I don't really know much about it, but this is also why I'm not including it, because there's not a reason for me to include it. Oh. What is the reason for comparing firewalls? Just pure business interest or any other? It's a question people ask constantly because I cover so many firewalls. So people want to know about the firewalls, and I almost limited it to just pfSense, USG, and UDM as the and maybe Untangle, because they're ones I've actually dove into on the channel. But I added a couple more just to go out there as outliers. And, I'll link to Christian Lempa's video on Sophos. He's covered for Sophos. He's making some new videos on it. Maybe by the time I make this video, he'll have a new firewall video just diving into Sophos, because these are probably the most frequently asked about ones on my channel. Like when people message me, when people ask questions, these are the firewalls that get the most questions on there. About the firewall, it has some limited 48 wireless access points. For example, if you can RDP your firewall, there's a special web interface. Last time I looked, yeah. I'm a Vios fan, Rick, and would recommend it I understand that it's probably not going to be talked about on the live stream. Yeah, the problem with Vios is it comes down to learning curves. Vios is popular in very high-end markets, and I'm not going to do a video on it because it's such a focus on those high-end markets. Nothing wrong with those high-end markets, but this is the challenge of doing a video. Like, cool, if I did a deep dive, which by the way, I don't use Vios all the time, but if you do a deep dive into something technical like that, you're not going to get a ton of views. A lot of people don't want to take on the burden of learning a more complicated firewall that you drive from the command line. I don't think it's a bad thing to learn this, but it's more of a niche job skill than a regular one. An example is a consulting call I had with a college, and they were a small college, and I liked the IT person. They were quite smart, but one of the problems they realized is they backed themselves into a corner. They had built all the firewalls using Linux systems. They did not use any appliances. The person was actually quite well versed in how to build firewalls. I was impressed. They did a very good job. They had a good security on it. They couldn't find anyone else to help them maintain it. And the person was moving on to another job, and they were trying to find someone to help manage a completely written from scratch system. Now, it was well maintained, and he had Ansible scripts to change things. He had an Ansible script to change firewall. It had all kinds of cool automation, but handing that over to someone versus handing someone an web interface type firewall, they're different skill sets. And part of the problem was he got a job offer that was going to pay substantially more. And the college budget for that job was this. And that budget was really small for someone who has the level of skill needed to do that, which is why he left, is because he got a job offer that was substantially more than what he was getting paid. I completely understand why he left, but now you're leaving people in a lurch going, now what? I can't find anyone that the competency that and the compensation you may get for having this high level of skill to be able to manage this means that job becomes a little bit harder. So yeah, go ahead and pop in, Steve. I'll send you the link. I'm sending it over Signal right now. There we go. Yeah, Vios does not have a GUI yet, so. I want to say they added, obviously, Let's Encrypt support as well. I do have the Let's Encrypt support listed as yes, but it's only for the firewall unless that changed. When I did take a look in the documentation for Let's Encrypt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only for the firewall. What feature are you missing the most on pfSense?
Remote management.
Yeah, the central management. We've built our. Well, I'm not gonna say we. We're gonna say Steve built. We're gonna point.
I did what I could.
Steve built a reverse VPN, so we have client ones going on there. Central management is a double-edged sword, and I don't like the way some people have done it. I like the way we've done it. I think it can be expanded, and maybe we'll look at maybe taking the time to write something for this. But the problem with remote management, some people had suggested, because there's a third-party company that offers remote management for pfSense. They do it via SSH keys. The problem I have, did you notice at the beginning of this video where I talked about a supply chain attack with 3CX and they use it to deliver everything? Yeah. If that one person, the one vendor, gets compromised and all the pfSenses are attached to it with full SSH access so they can remotely manage them without putting passwords in, now you can deploy rapidly to all the endpoints on there. That's scary and not a ideal situation. The way we do it is more sane, in my opinion, where it reverse proxies and connects, but that just gets us to the web interface. We still have to actually use a username and password to log into pfSense.
Well, and that's where I wish pfSense would have a solution, like a centralized dashboard similar to that of the Untangle.
Yeah.
Where it then just gets me to that login page. So then I have my account login. That gets me my list. Then from there, take me to that login page where I then have another login.
Yeah. OpenWRT is probably a great consumer product, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's not going to make the list here. It's a neat consumer project to reflash things with. I stayed away from some of the consumer ones out there.
We need to do a video about how I set up that.
Yeah, I agree.
We get that question a lot.
Yep. Do you think it's a good idea to do SS offload and pfSense and HTTP proxy and have IDS looking at exit point in a target server? I mean, it's kind of handy. You can have it if you have something that you need a reverse proxy to. You can have it doing IDS, but generally, the more common use case for HTTP proxy is not for external things, but it's so you can have internal services and have auto renewing SSL certs. So you can, let's say TrueNAS for an example, but you may have a handful of things internal to your network that you want to host internally and not have to deal with setting up or dealing with, security warnings. That's a common use for HA proxy, not for external. It can be used for external, but also for internal. But yeah, you can actually turn on IDS on it as well. Talk more about that remote management.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I have a meeting with our Canadian friend. He wants to know how I did it because he wants to set a bunch of them up.
Yeah. So we'd have to do a diagram to really say how he did it to make it clear to people. But essentially, you put a OpenVPN client config on each one of the clients that we have. So that OpenVPN then dials back to us and authenticates, and then has a port bound to it. It's really about that simple. That I described that accurately, Steve?
Yeah. So basically, everybody gets the same client config to talk back to us, but they have no rules that let traffic or anything come back.
Yes.
And then we set up port forward rules. So what happens is we hit our internal pfSense on different ports, and then that redirects to the corresponding pfSense. And you set each user up with a override. So, this client is this user gets this IP.
Now, a couple funny things we'll point out here. One, we called it Project Tunnel Bear. Steve did.
Yeah.
Thanks, Linus. So for inspiration on there. Two, you'll notice that this only has one internal IP address. We keep this very locked down and restricted. So it comes in and hits this, but it's all tied to only one IP because it's all you need to manage this. So
yeah, there's no LAN interface on it. It's WAN only.
Yep.
And in pfSense, if you don't have a LAN, it adds the anti-lockout rules to the WAN.
Yeah. So it's just a really simple system. Picture everything coming in. We have a NAT rule to pass through our public firewall only to this. And then this is in its own sandbox. That way, if there's ever an upstream compromise that tried to traverse across here, it can't spider out to any of the other systems. That's the important part of the way these rules work on here. And that's the part we'll highlight of how we did this.
Yeah, that was the complex part.
That's the complex part, is making sure all the rules. So this doesn't become a central point by which you can do anything other than hit the management web interfaces. And that's it. Yes. Yes, pfSense, and that's in my list here. pfSense does have high availability. I put that. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I have, I think, right at the top here. Yeah, high availability is on this line here. But that's a yes and a yes. And Cody can tell me if it's how close it is to beta. I know at some point in time, UniFi is supposed to get high availability, but we're mostly concerned about their availability. So
they have a shortage on UDMs?
I don't know.
I think it's just a shortage on everything else.
Yeah. Centralized pfSense, I use WireGuard, where each client's pfSense is a peer, and essentially WireGuard server is able to route to them. Yeah, it's another way you could do it.
Same premise. Me and Eric were actually talking about, do we move to WireGuard? The only downside is the packages. OpenVPN is built in versus now we got to make sure that this package is there, up to date, and working.
Yeah, I see. Cody's got an honest answer here. Oh, God, who knows about HA? It's tied to the PDU, which I don't understand either. So
I hated that thing.
Yeah. Do you have no concern about having internet VLANs and LANs and VLANs on the same XCommunion host? No, it's not public facing. It's a pinhole that goes into an isolated network that has its own rules. So it's its own VLAN with a lot of rules around it. So no.
Well, no rules around it.
Well, yeah, no rules because it's not allowed to go anywhere. So yeah. Encryption capacity. We have the capacity to encrypt. I don't know what that word means.
I think he means like highest level of encryption it can effectively run, which I mean, like pfSense, you could throw high level encryption at it if you have the hardware for it.
Oh, I see people saying, for example, Meraki doesn't support AES 128 or 256 GCM. Huh.
Yeah, it also on its normal VPN does a route all unless you write specialty scripts to tell it not to. I mean,
yeah. How do you let your customers' employees access their own network resources? A VPN, if they have to. VPN's generally the answer.
I thought he meant as in like logging in and managing things. I'm like, no.
Yeah, no. Generally,
try to avoid.
We try to avoid. We hold on to the keys.
We have a couple clients who have logins, and I like charging them to fix it, but I hate the emergency calls when they touch something.
Yeah. This is gonna go for about another 10 minutes because I have a few things I have to do, but I want to share something that's gonna make Steve laugh.
Okay.
And I'll get the opinion of people so you can see it before it happens. Is this thumbnail too much?
Yeah.
There's I was like, should I put my face in it? Or
No.
they attributed this right away to North Korea. Like they're like, this is
But
these
do we
guys.
know that they did it?
Interestingly, they cited that. So in the CrowdStrike write-up, they're very much blaming North Korea because they use exactly the same encryption keys. There's a ton of tells in there that basically say it's North
Okay.
Korea, and which is weird because normally you don't get attribution this early, but CrowdStrike from the very first announcement yesterday said those people did it, and I thought, well, I think it makes a good thumbnail. I mean, I don't say who did it. I just cite that CrowdStrike said who did it. So yeah, I couldn't resist the thumbnail. It made me laugh. If nothing else, I can.
Everybody knows North Korea is best Korea.
Yeah. I knew you would at least get a little chuckle out of it. A few people I shared it with got a chuckle out of it. So I think that's what I'm going to stay with for the thumbnail on the 3CX video. Out of topic a little bit.
No, that's pretty in topic. As long as you didn't forget the old switch and it's still in the controller, you can go into the settings and pull the configs to the new one from the old one, but there's a caveat. It has to be exactly the same switch.
Yes.
And UniFi on some of their newer 24, I think it was the 24 ports I was working on, they changed the product number, the name it shows up as in UniFi. So now you could have literally two of the exact same 24 port switch from UniFi, but they show up as the newer version show up as a different name in the controller. So you can't move the settings to those ones.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I can.
I wish I could remember who I was doing that for, and I ran into that.
I don't think we have two of this. I don't have a should say in mine.
No, we don't have one. I think it was the network in a box job I just did. I was pulling all the old configs, and I think the 24 port pros lined up, but the 24 port PoE didn't.
Yeah, we don't have two of the same ones in our lab either. Nope. Each one's a different model.
Oh,
well, they were, but when we split them to be lab,
yeah,
I can't.
yeah.
So, but what you want to do to make this work?
Did you put both the aggregation switches in the?
No, because one's in the lab and one's in there.
Okay.
But let's walk through the scenario really quick because it's not that hard to do.
The option's still there.
Yeah.
Now there is a complaint because UniFi's wording is not clear. The one you are selecting is the one you are pulling a config from.
Yes.
And it doesn't tell you that until you click on it. And that is a complaint because people get confused. Am I copying to or from? And then when you click on it, it tells you you're copying from.
Yeah. So enter device configuration here, apply the copied configuration from one device to another. And maybe they can add some wording to make that more clear. But essentially, that's what Steve's saying here is the way it works. Let's say this one, pick any one of these if you say this died. All right. So if the lab aggravation rack dies, that switch dies, we leave, do not unadopt. You leave that one in there. You adopt another replacement switch. Then you copy
the exact same type.
Of the exact same type, by the way.
And hope it's the same name.
Yeah.
So, they did that.
Yeah. So that's it's one of those.
Yeah, the fact that they changed product names, I don't know why.
But yes, that's the process for that. So yes, it can be done. No, it's not off topic. So many things.
Yeah.
Actually, what do you guys got plugged into this? If we show all the clients,
Not
much. Oh, I powered off because the radiation coming from the office was high. So I powered it all off.
We were worried there wasn't going to be enough power on those switches.
Yeah. When do you use pfSense and when do you use UDM Pro? We use pfSense. That's always the answer.
UDM Pros are great for
home users,
or if it's a small office where you want that extra stuff. Like if you're in a shared office space in a building and you want UniFi Protect for your door access, and it's like a small 6-person office, you're not using the VPN or anything, go ahead, put it in. It's great for that. You can throw a couple cameras on it. Boom, you just covered your little 10-person office. No problem.
You want to see something really funny?
Sure.
This is off topic, so yes, but it's on the first topic I shared. Man, I did too late. I already did the video. I'm not redoing it. This was sent to me by the three. I got the screen sharing. All right. This was sent to me by 3CX CEO Nicola after asking for a post-incident report and whether or not they had engaged security consultants. The CEO responded, "Thanks for your support in this difficult time. Please find another product and leave us to fixing this matter." His responses, it's like someone like they gave the guy a shovel and like, go dig a grave, man. Here's a shovel. Here's a social media account. Go. What about legal department? We'll deal with it in post. They've let the CEO talk. He's not said the nicest things. Apparently, he's not a good person. I didn't know this. I've just seen the commentary on Reddit of the CEO of the company not being the most wonderful human. And he's living up to, I see it as comments. I see it in reality now, him telling people. Let's see. Obviously, the dude needs to go. I can take a lot, but the CEO, this is petty in crisis. The final straw. Yeah. Oh man, dude owns a controlling stake in the company. He's going nowhere. Yeah, this is not going to help their reputation. They did not get out ahead of this at all. 3CX was like in full denial mode. But yeah, that's. Have you seen performance issue? UniFi Lite 8 switches. The test replaced an NG100-100 switch. Light long connection actually reports 100 megabits. Lite made it worse.
How long is the run? So what could be happening is if you replace an old 10-100, it could only negotiate 100, and if the run's too long, that's fine. But when you put the UniFi in, which is now gigabit, they both start trying to negotiate gigabit, but the run's too long, and then it starts just crapping out on itself. So you could try setting the negotiation on that port to 100, and it may fix it.
Yeah.
Travis had that problem.
Yeah. When you start having edge cases of wiring problems and things like that, that's a harder thing to even test. For the most part, if you're using good in-spec cable without any noise on it, even your cheapest switches perform at the specified spec that they claim. You can go buy a non-managed insert name of cheap switch. If it's labeled gigabit, it will probably route gigabit without a problem, without any difference. Because I've had in early days of the channel when I did more switch reviews, I feel like a lot of people, Tom, why didn't you do a speed test with iPerf on the switch? And I'm like, it's
a switch.
It's a switch. They do switching.
Yeah.
I haven't. Maybe there's some that exist, but for the most part, even the cheap ones do gigabit without even a thought. That's like because they're not doing anything they're not applying any rules or whatever. It's a pretty well established standard on there. But when you start having edge cases, how switches handle edge cases, I don't know the consistency along that. So
well, and that, like I said, that could just be a problem. He said it's a long run. It's possible that it's like Travis just said, he had a 500-foot run that at gigabit would start dropping because it was just too long. So when he set the port to 100 meg, it worked fine.
Yep.
Because you're running over Cat 6, which is meant for gigabit at 100 meters. But if you go further, it can go further, but you're not going to necessarily get gigabit. We had that one run that delivered, what was it, PoE and 100 meg at like 600-700 feet with some game changer cable.
The game changer cable, that's an option. Those MikroTik extenders are awesome.
Yes.
I reviewed those. Those are great. I had, I didn't do the follow-up video and I actually took it apart, but maybe I'll do the follow-up. I think it was probably for 6 or 7 months. I had one in a big bundle of cable. You remember it was just sitting in the studio area with one plugged in. I put a big coil of cable so it was going extra distance, and I put a PoE camera on the other end of it. I wanted to see if it'd melt, and it didn't. This question here, this is a fuzzy one, so to speak, because people conflate what MFA is. If you're using OpenVPN, there is certificate, and if you have a user certificate, you actually have 2 certificates, and then you have a username and password. Those are 3 factors of authentication. They need the outer certificate, the inner certificate, so to speak, if you will, the user certificate, and the username and password. So those are different factors of authentication. Now, if you're asking specifically about rolling authentication, like TOTP, a non-static form, I don't know when they're going to get proper support for this. And I say proper. Within the facilities of OpenVPN, that piece of information can be sent, but that is currently not. And I have a request with pfSense to add that. Oddly, Untangle has that, where instead of sending it, you can combine them with Radius. You can put the username in, and then the password is a password plus your TOTP. There's a way to do this with Radius. I believe I have a video on that as a topic, but it's not the same as actually putting it where it goes. So what
when you do it, you switch from using a password to a PIN plus your TOTP.
Right.
And the other caveat is because OpenVPN and pfSense by default rechecks your password every 2 hours.
Yep.
You get logged out in 2 hours.
Right.
Like clockwork.
Right. So it's one of those confusing things about how they did it. But I will point out Untangle, they're using and passing through that extra parameter on there. It's a built-in facility to the latest version of OpenVPN, but pfSense currently just doesn't expose it. I don't know why. So I do have a request with them that they should consider adding it.
Yes.
I don't know where that's at. But if you are trying to check the box of 2-factor authentication, then yes, those certificates are a factor of authentication. Because if I gave you my username and password and IP address for where I log in for VPN, that would not get you in unless you also had the accompanying certificates to go with it. So you have to get those certificates, hence they're a factor. There's no user management for
scalability.
Yeah, usability. WireGuard's awesome for site to site. WireGuard's a protocol. This is one of those dumb things. I think I did a video kind of complaining in the early days of WireGuard, and I said, why not to use WireGuard? And part of the problem is people get so overhyped about it, where they're like, but Tom, it has so many less lines of code than OpenVPN, therefore it must be easier to audit, more secure. I'm like, it's missing things. Saying it has less lines of code becomes an irrelevant statement because it's not doing all the things that OpenVPN can do. It's very singular task and has no user facility in it. So that's expected to be third party. So the transport layer, yay, cool. We can really dive in and audit that, but without those extra functionalities. And, there's companies that have built extra on top of it. For example, Tailscale uses WireGuard as a transport layer on the bottom, but their front end being Tailscale allows for that facility to be managed.
Yeah, we get a lot of people asking, hey, I want to switch over to WireGuard, and can all my users use WireGuard? We show them the setup process. They're like, I got to do this every time. You sure do.
Yeah.
How do I revoke it? Not as easy.
Not as easy. And you're basically throwing in descriptions to label who each WireGuard is. There's tools out there that manage it. Another one, I haven't used it, but I know people have asked me about it a couple of times, is called NetMaker. And that's one of the things it does, is it uses WireGuard as a back end, and NetMaker will help you manage it. Let me find it. What's their website? Is it netmaker.org? Funny, their docs page comes up before their website when I search NetMaker. But it's netmaker.io. That's why. Anyways, netmaker.io, if anyone wants to play with it. It's just another way to do it, but it's, once again, it's not like just throwing it in there. And no, I don't know how this would even integrate with pfSense. It's something a little bit different. So, nonetheless, all right. I want to answer this question. Entropy isn't what it used to be. That's my favorite joke about entropy. I don't understand what you're asking. Have I figured out entropy? You can never figure it out because entropy isn't what it used to be. What else do we have? I'll give it 3 more minutes of questions here because I got to publish this video and then go do a few things. So we can talk about the 3CX stuff. VPN protocols, horses for courses rather than one size fits all. Yes. It's all about which horse you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a complicated topic when you talk about firewalls because, like if you were to have Cisco on here, or technically I do because I got Meraki. Meraki, I believe, uses AnyConnect for the VPN. It's not like they have IPsec, but they do have other VPN tools they use that are not compatible with OpenVPN at all. There's something different.
I believe by default it is a full tunnel. You have to work to make it not full tunnel.
Yeah. Entropy jokes just fall apart. Yes, they do. Yeah, the firewall video will be a spicy one for sure. People love to argue about it. I threw Tailscale on here, which is a nod to pfSense because I know it's one of those categories that only pfSense clicks the yes box in. But Tailscale is becoming extremely popular. So my videos on it have suddenly gotten more views, and also a lot more people asking me for updated videos on it. So I don't know if Tailscale's changed. I think they're just doing a marketing campaign, which drives people to start looking for Tailscale more. But it's an easy to use and popular solution. So, I've seen this. It's once again, stupid laws, dumb people trying to push stupid laws on us.
We just watch the Senate hearings on TikTok and you realize this is going to go nowhere. They have no idea how any of this works.
They don't. Yeah, it's a giant disaster. It goes off topic of my channel, but yes, it's once again those in charge trying to reduce the level of security that we have because they think that's the solution to things, because they always do. Terrible legislature. No shock. Shocking. No other emails. I got plenty of emails, but just not from Vlog Thursday people. So we will wind this down so I can publish my photo. I did get a DM from a friend. Apparently, he noticed that I shared it. His suggestion was Kim Jong talking to the CEO of 3CX, and I'm like, as funny as that would be, I don't got time to draw that. Perhaps user management Tailscale on a pfSense with subnet router could be an option to make sense for the roads. Yeah, I've suggested to a couple of people, and they were surprised how easy Tailscale was to set up. Mm-hmm. It's a solid solution for that. Matter of fact, one of the reasons I love its integration into pfSense is obviously you have to install the Tailscale client to be able to talk to things. But what if you have printers you want to talk to and things like that you can't load Tailscale? There's ways you can actually tunnel traffic from an endpoint and laterally move over to something, or even better, you'll load it on pfSense and everything on that particular network has access, and then your road warriors have access via the Tailscale network to have the VPN. Now, people bring this up sometimes, and it's really important to think about, because people say, well, what happens if that endpoint goes rogue, man? Something happens. It's connected. I'm like, well, the same problem happens with the VPN. I've had people thinking like Tailscale should inspect the traffic, and I'm like, no, not their problem. You should have endpoint security doing that, because a user that's on your VPN that turns malicious, you have exactly the same threat model. Now, maybe it's not an always on VPN, so they'd have to log in, and maybe you're forcing password from the login, but lots of people leave their VPN logged in. So the threat model is kind of the same. And if they're using the computer or have some backdoor on it, they're going to activate that while it's connected via VPN. And yeah, so it's really not a Tailscale problem, but Tailscale is a neat solution, and its integration of pfSense is pretty cool. Solves problems for people.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
The Morty one's right next to it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I washed them.
Oh, good.
I brought them home. I threw them in the washer. They're cleaned up. I just haven't put them up anywhere. They're still sitting on the bar back there. I've been working on cleaning before I leave for Florida.
Look, someone wants a unicorn, Steve. Oh, yes. We love the $500 to $1,000 system that can do 10 gig IDS, IPS.
That
sure sounds.
Well, I mean, it's technically with pfSense and custom hardware, you could probably get a Ryzen system that would maybe do that.
But how good is that traffic inspection? And the reality is, really good IDS IPS is going to be full SSL decryption, because the firewall is blind to most of this stuff because it's encrypted. And if you start decrypting it, now you created a huge workload on there. So it's a lot to think about. All right. Well, I'm going to bounce. I'm going to go do a few things, and I will chat with everybody later. I'm going to get this video published.
I'm going to go back to getting ready to leave.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So we all got places to go today.
No, I mean, like, well, that too, but I mean for Florida.
Oh, that's right.
I'm getting all my stuff together.
Steve becomes Florida man.
Yeah. I leave at 4 a.m.
Oh, that's 4 a.m. tomorrow?
4 a.m. tomorrow, and then driving. So by this time tomorrow, I'll probably be like Kentucky.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you're driving.
Yeah. With all the, they're turning flights around, canceling flights, and
I avoid airports. I'm just saying.
That
I don't like.
The last thing I want is to get to the airport, then find out, oh, we canceled your flight and you're going to sit for 4 hours.
I have no fear of flying. I am just greatly aggravated by inefficiency and stupidity, and there is a plethora of it that you will find.
The best airport is Detroit. They don't screw around. They get you on that plane.
Yeah, it's leaving Florida. If you're in the Disneyland, it's like,
especially in the Orlando area, it is a mess. Like, you stand in line. It's one of those things, like, they tell you be there like an hour early. Detroit, they're just like, go, go, go. You're sitting there. And then when they call you up, hey, if you're section 123, get up here, go. They're getting you on a plane, getting you out of here. They're not playing around. But Orlando, we stood in line. We stood just standing there in line before the TSA. The line got so long, they started skipping the scanners and just having the bomb sniffing dog go up and down the rows.
Yeah. It's, though, I still love, is it Ron White, when he was talking about the planes? He's got that one joke. Someone says, one of the engines went out. How far do you think it'll get us? And he's like, all the way to the scene of the crash, man.
Yep.
This is interesting because I ordered a bunch of stuff, and then because I heard people saying they were having problems, I ordered stuff and it came. Someone told me it took 2 weeks. Someone told me it took a week. Mine took about a week to get. So I don't really know. If 50 days ago, I would contact your credit card company. We don't do the fulfillment. The swag store people do. So yeah. We see. Oh, are you aware partial reflection of the monitors in front of you? Yes, I am. Do you have coated lenses, and what focal length do you have? I have no idea. I just know there's a reflection when I do this, and I don't know. I think that's a consequence of putting glass in front of your face. But it does make it easier for you to read things.
Touch your eyeball?
What's that?
You don't want to get contacts and touch your eyeball?
No, contacts horrify me. So add-ons to pfSense, I've covered them. I use the add-ons. Look at my patching video.
A lot of good ones.
The patching one is probably my favorite. Patching and PF blocker and OpenVPN client export. I'll do a new video soon about my favorite tools for pfSense, because those are always fun to talk about.
Oh yeah, Travis wears contacts.
Does he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I forgot.
I actually like glasses. I'm not bothered by these in any way. I'm enjoying how it's crazy
how clear things look.
What's that?
How clear things look.
Well, yeah, I didn't know how hard I was looking at things until I put these on, and I'm like, oh, it just, maybe I didn't need to buy a new laptop. But I did. I went bigger on my laptop, and it helped. Glasses helped way more. Turns out glasses cost less than my laptop.
Yeah.
But I have an OLED screen on my laptop, so there's that.
I was supposed to wear them years ago, but the problem was they made everything smaller, and then with my peripheral vision, I'd get dizzy because everything here is big, everything here is small, and I'm like, I don't like this.
Yeah. Yep. All right, man. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and hit us up in the forums. Easy place to find and contact me if you have questions. I see people DM me on Twitter. I just got a DM on Twitter, and I don't even make sense of it. Like, I've been tweeting since 38 minutes after the notice was released about 3CX, because I was in the Huntress Insiders. So as soon as everything became public, I started tweeting about it yesterday, right? Someone just goes, "Hey Tom, do you notice that there's a 3CX thing going on? You might want to do a video about it." Just like, I don't know why people send me things without at least looking at what I'm already tweeting. Like, you're DMing me, but you didn't look at what I already tweeted, and I've tweeted like a lot about it. Because I've been sharing a lot of the other security researchers' findings. One of the reasons I do that is if I tweet everything, I can then just go through and look what I tweeted to compile all the list of links. So I do it to share knowledge. I do it because it's faster than bookmarking everything. I'll just like retweet, and then someone DMs me, "Hey Tom, did you see this? Did you see my Twitter?" All right, enough of me ranting about stuff. Later, everyone, have fun, and I'll catch you later, Steve.